This bonus episode was brought to you by the Gackoids over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And now, on to the episode.
Okay, here we are at Fun Central. Come on, get in there. Good boy. Just look at all the raw footage. 53 hours. 57. Sorrow. Naked. Oh, look! Snappy, snappy!
Oh my!
Naked!
Oh my! Oh my! My!
Naked! 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 Far out. Like zonkey. Kick it.
Snappy, snappy, Gackoids! Welcome to Splat Attack, a podcast overflowing into the slime-filled past. I'm your groovy, geeky beatnik, Brett.
And I am your avant-garde video hipster, Alex. Now, Brett.
Yes?
Why do you think we might be descending a staircase today?
You say that like it's a bad thing.
It could be a bad thing.
Well, I mean, it might be if you're caught off guard on camera. You know, for those in the know, we're heading downtown into the crazy world of O-Town today, and we'll be talking about one of the silliest yet most scandalous episodes of Rocko's Modern Life to date, Camera Shy.
Well, this is going to be a fun one. I can feel the excitement already. But before we begin, I think we need our camera operator to set up before we shoot the next scene at, 3 a.m.
Why would he be filming me then?
Oh, well, you'll see.
I don't like the look of that. But we do need someone to help us finish the big head cooking scene and transfer the mini DV tapes to VHS for editing. So, all right. I guess we can enlist the help of someone from the Chameleon Brothers video shop. What do you got for us today, Alex?
Well, look, it's Russ Montague.
What's up, cool cats? Great to be here. What are we filming today?
Good question. Ask Alex. He's the director. I'm just the actor. Maybe Rocko behind me.
Well, hopefully Rocko behind you. He's going to be our main focus today. Today we're going to be doing an episode review, and I'm excited about this one because, like I had said on other Rocko episodes that we've covered, that I hadn't really had the chance to get back into Rocko as an adult. So anytime we get to do a Rocko episode, I'm excited, and this was one of the few that really sticks out to me, and I was excited to check this one out again. So we're going to be doing an episode review of the Camera Shy episode.
Indeed, definitely looking forward to it. Do you guys have any memories of watching this episode growing up at all?
Well, I'll start because I have very little. The only thing I really remember is the censor bar that's in this episode. That is the image that sticks out, the first image for me every single time. And I remember the shock that I felt as a kid. No, because I've seen shows flipping through the channels where we saw the censor bar and other, but I couldn't believe they had one in a cartoon. It just baffled me. But that's really the only memory I have about this episode as a kid.
Yeah, I think from what I'm remembering in my head, it was an episode I saw when I was in third grade, which would be around like 1996. So I think I caught it a little bit late, but I remember like watching the other half first, which was Fists and Chumps, which we'll save for another episode. And I just remember being fascinated by like the walrus captain guy who had wooden eyes, and he had showed both of those behind of his eye patches, and that caught my attention because I started like drawing the characters because it looked interesting to me. And then I remember seeing this one. I'm like, wow, the feel of this is really different than some of the other Rocko episodes I've seen. Like it's a lot more candid. It kind of has a similar wackiness to Wacky Deli or like Teed Off, where they're just like, blowing the lid off the limits and seeing what direction they go in. And definitely, I don't want to go too much into it because I'm going to get into it a little bit more later as we go through Synopsis. But there's one particular scene where Heffer makes a certain face and says a catchphrase that always stuck with me. And anytime someone mentions, that word casually in conversation, I immediately do like the face and the impression perfectly.
For me, listen, I was obsessed with Nickelodeon right from the start. And when this aired, and I looked this up, this aired new at 11:30 a.m. on a Sunday of all days. I'll leave it to Nickelodeon to throw up a brand new hit show, 11:30 a.m. And you got to think of the sandwich that this was between. So here's your 2-hour block: Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, Pete and Pete, and Alex Mack. There's no way I wasn't tuned in to a 2-hour block like that. And the day just continues from there. And you've got some old school hits, Wild and Crazy Kids, Doug, like it really goes back. For me, Brett, the catchphrase you were talking about is something that I always held on to, and we'll get into that later. I would also say Rocko coming down the stairs with the censor bar. That just was always, I think there was something about cartoon characters being embarrassed when they were naked, despite the fact that they're pretty much naked all the time anyways.
Yeah.
That always stuck with me. So I don't think it's until I rewatched it now as an adult that I understood the absurdity of this episode. But back then, what I held on to and what I remember are the things I see now in a different light.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting how nudity works in media, because the way it's set up, cartoon characters wear shirts all the time without pants. Why aren't they wearing the censor bar when they wear the shirt?
Yeah, Doug.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but it made for some interesting humor for sure.
Yeah, it always struck me whenever Bugs Bunny would do that, but it was always in the Three Bears episode. Or no, it wasn't that episode, but the same premise. A character would go and open up all these doors, and Bugs would be there in a costume. Then he'd open up a door. He'd be there again in another costume. Then he'd open up the door, and now he's in a shower, and then would cover himself.
Just for the pure absurdity of it. It makes you want to think that he's showering as a female in the shower, and he's covering up. Wiles. Yeah, I think Looney Tunes really set the bar for what is hilarious in terms of comedy. And
definitely,
it's really lasted throughout the ages in waves.
And I do love how, in a sense, this is when a cartoon breaks its own sort of third wall by having the censor bar, but then the censor bar becomes an item, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But it's this third wall within that is, and there's more. And as we get into this, there's more things in this episode, because I watched this episode many, many times, and I know, Rocko's Modern Life is one of those shows that if you pay attention to the background long enough, you're bound to see some weird stuff. And there's a lot of things out there about different episodes of Rocko's Modern Life that there are some really weird things in there. So I found a couple, and I'll bring them up as we go through. Nothing too crazy in this episode. The episode was crazy enough, I think.
Yeah. I feel like this would be a great candidate for a podcast episode if we did favorite Nicktoons innuendos, because this and Ren and Stimpy would be loaded with them.
Oh, yes.
Without a doubt.
Alrighty, well let's not delay, because I think our battery's charged for our video camera. So we gotta blah, blah, blah. Let's make some magic, as Heffer would say. So our episode info for Camera Shy is was season 3, episode 4B, according to IMDb, and according to my DVD set from Shout Factory, it's actually episode 6B. So slightly different there. And its air date is November 12th, 1995. It was written by Tim Hill, Doug Lawrence, and Robert McNally Skull, and directed by Doug Lawrence and Robert McNally Skull. He's actually the same Mr. Lawrence that's referenced in the credits of SpongeBob, so go figure. The synopsis is as follows. The story begins with Rocko wanting to show his Australian parents how he lives his daily life in O-Town by making a home video journal, enlisting the help of his friends Heffer and later Filbert to help. Heffer tells him if he is sending this all the way to Australia, they have to make it interesting. So Heffer adds some pizzazz, with Rocko showing various locations such as where he works and Spunky failing to do tricks on command. The lovable Pooch sniffs the lens and turns around to do his quote-unquote special trick, but sadly the camera battery dies at that very moment. Later on, Heffer suggests doing a cooking segment with Bev Beakhead. While she instructs how to make fly cakes, her husband Ed stomps into the room, unenthused, and tosses out Filbert, Rocko, and Heffer along with the camera. The camera cuts to snowy static. So after these first couple scenes, which seem to really fly by, how do you all feel about this opening and the boys enlisting the big heads to be a part of Rocko's video diary?
I mean, why do they enlist the big heads in anything? It's like the big, if we're going to talk generally about the big heads, you've got Bev, who is in love with Rocko, and you've got Ed is just hates him, and they keep enlisting these guys. And when you really think about the absurdity of this video they're filming, why would his parents want to see the neighbors make, fly pies or whatever she was making?
Yeah, they're all wallabies. They wouldn't eat that.
They're all wallabies. And so for me, what I love about this opening is it's the loosest setup for this ridiculous plot that really only is designed to get Rocko naked on camera. and why not? It was the 90s, and anything and everything goes. So if that's what we're doing to get Rocko naked, whatever, I'm here.
Yeah, sex tapes were very popular back then. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Sure.
No, I agree. Back in the 90s, because you got to remember, we didn't have video chat like we do now. We didn't have cell phones where we could do video chat through that and FaceTime. We had to either take pictures and send it in the mail, or and this is exactly what I did, home videos. I had a friend who had moved to South Carolina and still lives there, and I would fill an 8-hour tape of all kinds of things. I would make goofy videos. I mean, I made movies all the time. I didn't make videos, I made movies. And we made this joke about how we try to make the most mundane, stupid thing look cool. So even something as simple as mowing the yard, how can I make this look as cool and as funny as possible?
Do it like Pete.
Yes. And then I would add cool background music because I don't have to have copyrights for an at-home VHS tape. I can do whatever I want. But I did stuff like this all the time, and would send it to him. And I even did the cooking thing, which I thought was hilarious when I first saw this, because I had completely forgotten about it. But Gackoids, this is for all of you. I still have that video of me doing this ridiculous cooking with Alex segment.
Oh, if you have a digital copy of that, we need to add this in.
so I will put it up there for you guys to see, because it was me. It was college age me just being a moron, but I loved every bit of this because the reason, the way Heffer and Filbert would behave with the camera, we know what they're doing. They're making fun of our parents whenever they were messing with the camera, because I don't know how many home videos that I've got where my dad would be videoing and mom would be, is the red light on? Does the red light on mean it's recording? Yeah, I guess it's recording. It says recording right here. And then the battery would go dead, or it would come back up and go dead and come back up. And it's like, that is our parents.
Yeah.
And I was cackling every single moment, especially whenever they finally got the Spunky to finally do his trick, because that's every pet and that's every toddler.
Yeah.
Come on, do it.
Maybe he's asleep.
Come on, Spunk. Good boy. Spunky, please.
Yeah, what you just said reminded me of George Carlin's sketch from the 90s where he's imitating people when they first got video cameras, and he's like, oh, of course, there's some wahoo just running around with his camera, filming everything wherever he goes, as if it's the most important thing in the world. And I'm like, yeah, I think a lot of people were very much like his imitation in the 90s, just really fascinated by everything with this new device that could somehow change the world. And yet now it's so commonplace, with Instagram live streaming on your phone or whatever, that it just seems whatever.
Doesn't anyone in this country just stop and look at things anymore? Sort of take them in, maybe even remember them?
Yeah. Funny how attitudes about technology change over time.
Well, what's funny too is we soon learned that Rocko had to rent the camera from the videos. He didn't even own it, right? So we take for granted it's not even his. This is something he went out, rented, and he's got a limited time with it. And that kind of makes sense for that time period as well, because that would have been a very expensive piece of tech, and then having to have someone else edit it. And, as we get into it, the story doesn't make a lot of sense nowadays because you would just do this on your phone in no time. But back then, the whole thing made sense.
Yeah, it was a lot of work to make a home video back then, professionally or amateurish even.
I remember a time whenever you would have to go to like Blockbuster Video just to be able to rent a PS2 system when it first came out.
I did that.
that.
I rented an N64 too.
So, and they over at grocery stores now, they still have carpet cleaners that you can rent. I mean, and things like that are still, it's still fairly relatable today, but not in terms of video cameras. But it's still a thing of having to rent expensive equipment to do things that we want to do.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to me that we, specifically with Rocko's Modern Life, we always go back to these neighbors who are like sort of hated but not real, like they're never really there to help. They're kind of always in the way in a weird way. And when you look at a lot of like cartoon shows, you look at Dennis the Menace, you look at things like that, the neighbor is always this weird like rock in their shoe type character. And so no different here. But again, we have Rocko saying, well, let's go ask them to film. So I've got limited time with this camera I've paid money for and rented. Let's go to the people that either I don't like or don't like me and ask them to do something for my parents, because as he says, he says something like, my parents are worried about me and I want to show them I'm doing well. So I'm going to show them my neighbors cooking a meal, and that'll obviously really tell them I'm doing okay. I mean, it's such a leap. But, I think it also stems to bring Bev into the plot towards the end. Without her now, she might not be there in the end.
It's funny how she gets indirectly more involved as it progresses and we see certain events unfold. Like even at the very end too, when we get a glimpse of how the episode ends. But we'll get there when we get there. It's just a lot of fun layers to peel back as we go through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also want to note before we get back into the synopsis is that this opening, or even just this plot in general, remind me a lot of this Salute Your Shorts scene from the episode from season 1. It was episode 4 called Brownies for Thud Mackie, in which Michael Stein had to essentially make like a videotape similar to what Rocko did to his grandparents to send him an extra set of baked brownies for this bully so that the bully wouldn't beat him up for smushing his brownies by accident. And there's a lot of motions that he goes through, showing him what we do at camp. This is the people I interact with who are disinterested. And Heffer gives Rocko a nickname in this episode, very much like Budnick gives Michael a nickname as giving him a hard time because he's such a softie. So I always like finding parallels between Nick shows whenever they pop up in this situation.
Moosh moosh. I'd rather be dead.
We love you very much, Boo Boo. Boo Boo? Boo Boo? Boo Boo?
Alrighty, getting back to the episode. Rocko has had a long day and is tired, but Heffer and Filbert yearn to film more footage. Once Rocko turns in for the night, Hef and Filb sneak around the corner to Rocko's living room window and prepare to get some footage after dark. Turns out Rocko has a ritual where he heads downstairs for a glass of milk at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Heffer and Filbert restrain giddiness while they wait for the event to happen, revealing the shocking twist. Rocko is completely naked. For not a moment sooner does Rocko walk down the stairs with a humorously placed sensor bar around his lower region. He drinks his milk while he is being filmed. Heffer gives a cat call whistle, and Rocko immediately turns around, wide-eyed in horror. Just then, Filbert and Heffer make a run for it, filming their feet while escaping the scene. And then, of course, the camera gets snowy again like it has before. The next day, the trio of friends head off to the Chameleon Brothers video editing store to return the camera along with their 57 hours of raw footage. Yikes. The brothers are amazed, then promptly suggest their video editing services to cut down on time. Rocko isn't sure, but Heffer snaps back by telling them not to be cheap. He begrudgingly agrees and signs a release. The Chameleon Brothers also express the restrained excitement once Rocko leaves the video store. Raw footage! Just like that.
57 hours. They must have recorded a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Monsters episode.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Or the Green Ranger miniseries, something like that. So what do you guys think you'd do if you were ever caught naked being filmed by your friends? Do you think Heffer and Filbert's behavior is more common on social media these days in relation to these kind of candid moments?
I have so much to say about these two questions, but I'll let Russ go first.
Okay, so listen, I took some notes, and they're just kind of my generalized thoughts of this, and they're really point blank because this is heavy, right? I mean, look, if we're talking about a cartoon show, I'm not going to go too crazy on it, but I will say this: look, in today's age, we know that this is not cool anymore, but I do think in 1995, this was viewed no different than your mom showing your first girlfriend pictures of you in the bath as a baby. I think it was sort of akin to that. And I think that's how it would have been viewed by anybody watching. Today, of course, we have a whole new, so like in the 90s, what Heffer did was funny. In 2020, it's a legit crime. And so, like to go down that road is a really sort of weird thing. Now, there are some great scenes in this. This is where we see the censor bar. This is where Heffer does the naked, with his eyes. And got that
signature-looking catchphrase.
It's almost like Ren and Stimpy-esque, if you will.
Yes.
And this is, I believe, this is where we see Spunky sort of do his trick and the battery runs low. I will say, that, in my opinion, that Spunky scene was incredibly long. When you watched it, it had to be a good 25, 30-second scene, which was like,
oh yes,
for what is already a half episode, right? Which is maybe 12 minutes when you take a commercial, something like that. To have a 30-second scene of Spunky just shaking his butt, sniffing the camera, shaking his butt again, it really starts to drag on to get to that joke, which I thought was kind of funny. So, I mean, this is like the real big buildup of the episode, right? Where we've got Rocko naked-ish, we've got the Heffer and Filbert are running amok. It's just wild. I love this whole part, and I'm not even going to get into the whole fact that the camera dies enough to turn off filming, but stays on enough to record audio. I don't know how their batteries work in their town.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's my mixed 2 cents of the whole scene.
Get ready. Here he goes. You're gonna love this moment, Dad. Here he goes. Woo! All right, Spunky.
Wow! How'd he do that?
To go with what would you do if your friends ever caught you filming you naked? Okay, so this will be a bit TMI, but I don't really care. You guys are paying for this content.
Yeah. Patreon's after dark.
Yep. I have no shame. My wife has learned that very, very quickly. I have zero shame. So, I mean, in our own home, I will get out of the shower, and back in our old house, there was the front door and then this huge living room window. I would open the front door just out of the shower, and then she would run to the door. What are you doing? And slam it shut. And then, of course, she would push me out of the way right in front of the window. So I just opened the curtains, and I'd stand there with hands on my hips, and she'd, no, stop. And she'd close the curtain, and I would go back to the door and open the door. And then she'd push me back to the window. I'd open the window. I mean, we did this back and forth, and she never could stop me. And then there was one day, our car was behind a car part, or not a car park, port, back behind the house, but there was a long sidewalk that you had to walk down, so it was separated. And she got in the car, she got ready to leave, and then she called me from the car and said, "I forgot my purse. Will you bring it to me?" So front,
I know where this is going.
Front, I look normal. I walked out to the car, gave her the purse. I turned around, and I'm completely mooning everyone around.
Were you wearing a chef apron?
No. I had on my shorts. I just had them pulled down in the back.
Hello, I'm Dr. Cheeks. I'm doing my rounds, and I'm a little behind.
And then I hear her scream, "Alex Nance!" I'm like, "What? Oh, what if our neighbor sees you?" "They're welcome." And then just walked back to the house. So I have no shame.
You know what I'd imagine someone who happened to catch a glimpse of your tuchus say is the Filbert line from Rocko's episode Belch of Destiny.
Hey, pal. Get your buns out of my eyes.
And he's got the hamburger buns.
But the other thing that I thought of, because I started laughing during the description because I just had a memory come to me while you were describing it. I didn't think it at all when I was watching the episode, but my father, he would often sleep in just his underwear. Mm-hmm. And same friend that moved to South Carolina, he came over to spend the night one night and we'd be up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning playing like Soul Calibur or something like that. And at one point he goes to the kitchen to get a glass of milk or something, and my dad comes out of the bedroom at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to go use the restroom. And our rooms are right beside each other, so my friend has gone out into the kitchen. My dad comes out thinking we're in my room playing video games, and he's just in his underwear. And then my friend starts to make his way back down the hallway, and they were head-on colliding. Neither of them were looking at each other. And it's 1 o'clock in the morning. It is dark until they got very close because he was just drinking. Then he stopped and saw my dad there, and Dad's eyes were all groggy. And the moment they saw each other, I just heard them both scream.
I lost again.
Whatever. Pops, yo Pops, I found your Mustache Monthly. I tried not to look and just give him the magazine, but I saw
his junk mail.
and my dad just goes, "Oh, I'm sorry," and goes back into the room. And then my friend comes in and he goes, "I'm scarred." What happened? He said, "I just saw your father and only his whitey tighties." I said, "Oh, was that a sight?" He said, "I might not be able to sleep tonight."
You just opened the floodgates for every time I saw someone or a cartoon character naked in my lifetime. Thank you very much. It's like now as you're talking about this naked, like, where have I seen people naked before? And it's like my friend's sister who was like in kindergarten running out on the driveway while her mom's chasing her to put some clothes on. Old people I didn't want to see in a retirement home.
Funny you say that, though. I recall being, maybe 13 years old, and I had a paper route, and it's got to be close to Christmas, so it gets dark really, really early. And it's like this. It's ingrained in my memory. I went up to this one house, and I didn't know who lived there, and I was just about to put the paper in the mailbox, and evidently they must have had a teenage daughter, maybe 20, 22 years old, and she comes up from the basement completely naked, walks right past the front door and goes upstairs, and there's like 13-year-old me standing there, and it was just the perfect timing. I didn't mean to be there, but I mean, I was like frozen in fear. At first I was fearful that she was going to see me and it was going to be this really weird moment, and then I grew up incredibly fast in that 1 second scene, because I think I went from 13 to 20 myself in that instant moment, and right then and there I really always tried to deliver the paper at that same time. In the end, I never knew who she was. She obviously never found out. It was just a moment in time that happened, and you guys talking about this has flooded that back into my memory.
Oh yeah.
I was the heifer in that moment,
completely naked, with no clothes on.
Yep.
Naked.
We all had a few memories locked in the old vault that we like to keep secret.
Can I also say that in this scene, I really looked. So Rocko opens his fridge, and I realized his parents should be worried because he has nothing. We can actually, Brett, we can see it behind you right now. He has milk and a whole bunch of what appears to be condiments and nothing else. I mean, he is not eating at all. There's nothing in this fridge.
All bare.
All bare.
he's living the bachelor life. What can I say?
Something. Well, he's working at a comic shop part-time, and he owns his own house, so I don't think he's got a lot for food.
Yeah, that's just living in his 20s, because I think he's like 23 in the show. It's been established, or somewhere near that. Yeah, let's get back to the plot before we go on an endless tangent about naked moments in our lives. We can make a whole episode on that too. You got Naked Tommy from Rugrats. You got Hamburger Boy when Doug has his shorts stolen. You've got Ren and Stimpy being naked in the great outdoors.
I smell a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, we love finding all sorts of different topics to just kind of mush together and really bring new light to them. So 2 more episodes for the schedule. All right. Getting back to Camera Shy. So after that full frontal display, down in the basement of the video store lies an artsy beatnik cafe of the Chameleon Brothers video store, where the brothers showcase Rocko's video to the crowd, La Vie Moderne de Pinto, which is Spanish for the modern life of Pinto, which is actually a white horse with large splotches of color on its fur. Fun fact of the day. Very odd editing choices, but it's nonetheless Rocko's footage all edited together to make a visual poem, complete with flowers blooming, a live-action shot of a stormy sky, and Rocko walking down the stairs naked, while a chorus of angels sing, all with a funky synth track in the background. Meanwhile, upstairs, Rocko comes in to pick up his tape and notices a sign stating, "Please go downstairs for service." So Rocko walks downstairs and notices his naked self walking downstairs in perfect sync with his own actions. Stunned, Rocko stumbles and falls down to the bottom. Rocko panics, demanding, "What is going on?" The brothers say that he is a star and that they have even made copies for sale. Bev immediately wants to buy 9 copies out of their 11,000 copies, a nod to leapfrogs, perhaps. Rocko's anxiety hits its peak when Bev pulls out her credit card. Immediately, Rocko latches onto her face, begging her to buy them all so no one else can witness his walk of shame. The brothers state they only have 900 copies in the store, and that the rest have already been distributed to every hip store in town. Rocko dashes out of the front entrance of the video store screaming with dismay. So, as absurd as this scene is there anything about it that's relatable to you guys?
Yes, I actually have a couple. But Russ, is there anything for you first?
No, you know what, Alex? I want to hear yours because you've got stories for days.
They're actually fairly tame, to be perfectly honest. Nothing like the last couple, but I do recall again going through home videos. I was over at my aunt's house in Arizona, and my parents, because we've not seen each other in years, brought all the home videos that we had recorded over the years, and I was in the next room making my own home videos while I was there because I used to study, and I'm really frustrated with how things turned out, but I was a huge Bill Cosby fan as a kid, and I used to do Bill Cosby skits in elementary school and junior high, and I had them memorized, so I would just sit in front of a video camera and do all these skits, and then I went to the living room, and they were all watching a home video of me taking a bath.
While doing Cosby in the bath?
Yeah, no, it was when I was much younger. I think it was 4 years old. In the video that they're watching, it wasn't like it was anything fairly recent, but I was in 6th grade whenever this took place, whenever I was doing all these Bill Cosby things. So I was recording that, and then I came back and they were watching an old video of me taking a bath, and I was like, why? I mean, I don't care, but why? But the other one was, it's actually a bit more cool, was in high school. It was my senior year in high school, and I was taking graphic communications 2. We learned to make our own airbrush t-shirts and notepads, photography, and that's where I learned how to edit videos, at least using a computer, because for the longest time I would have to use 2 VCRs and a CD player and a cassette and the video all connected to one TV, and that's how I edited videos then, because I didn't we didn't have a computer. Junior high and high school I was editing videos, and nothing has changed since then. Here I am 37 and still doing it. But high school was the first place where I got to use a computer to do this, and all the cool technology, all these transitions and effects and filters and sound effects you can add. I mean, I was a kid in the candy store with this kind of stuff, and I got to have a partner for several videos that I got to do that year, and she was also very excited, and she was wanting to do editing stuff too. So we often would pitch each other our ideas for videos that we would want to do, and we did them together. One of them she had was called the 12 Steps to Anarchy, and it was just breaking rules in school. But they were the rules that aren't the major rules, but the ones that just the teachers are annoyed by. So it was that kind of thing. Like this class didn't have those regular chairs. They had the swivel chairs with the wheels on the bottom. We weren't allowed to sit in it and then just roll to the other side of the room.
I had that roll too.
So and it was called chair surfing in our room. So one of our rules of the 12 Steps to Anarchy was we would break the chair surfing rule, and while the teacher wasn't there, we got about 4 other kids, and we went out into the hallway, and we had jousting sessions. We were bowling, like one person would sit in it and the others would push, and all these other rules like that all the way through. And then I was editing all this together, all these different 12 steps, and each step had a different video look or a different song or something. I got to play with editing, and it was cool. And I had fun with it. And then I left, and a few weeks later, I was working on another project for the same class. We were doing a parody of Jeepers Creepers, but it was called Hey, This Isn't Scary. And I needed more time. It was near the end of the school year, near the end of the term at the moment, and I wanted to go and finish it. So I was done with my project done with what I had to do at the current class. Can I go over to graphic communications and finish editing? They said, yeah, sure. So when I got there, he was showing examples of other kids' projects throughout the year. And when I walked in, he was playing the 12 Steps to Anarchy video that I had already put together. And he was cracking up at the chair surfing bit. And I was surprised that he was showing it. I thought it was just something stupid that only me and my friend would like, but he was genuinely impressed with how we had put the whole thing together. So again, Gackoids, I still have that. So I will put that up if you really want to see some of the Alex's dumb history. But it was a fun thing to do as a kid, and it really cemented my love for editing that much further.
This makes perfect sense why we're doing a podcast together with a video component, because I have a rich video editing history from my childhood too that is somewhat similar to yours. And I'll just touch upon it real quick so it's not a 2-hour episode. Basically, my grandmother taught me how to record on a VCR when I was in first grade, and my first show that I recorded was Inspector Gadget, then Wienerville, of all things. And I just got hooked on it. I kept making tapes, my own mixtapes of like Nickelodeon shows, labeling them, making fake VHS covers for them with like paper and crayon. And then when I got older, yeah, I even tried to sell them to kids in 3rd grade. Who knew? I was trying to get some lunch money and candy from the student store. And oh man, what a wild.
Keep going. I'll be right back.
You know, I from there, I just wanted to get more involved with like the video aspect of things. And I even would get like parents requesting me, including my own parents, like, hey, can you fix my VCR? Do you know what's wrong with it? Because I had a lot of experience working with VCRs, and there were even situations where I had to like take them apart to fix it so I could keep recording. I just learned how to do it on the fly. And eventually, you know, once I got the hang of that, I found enough interest that I took TV production class in sophomore and junior and senior year of my high school, which was unheard of because it's only a 2-year class, but I loved it so much I took it twice. So around that time, I actually got involved with the filmographers who filmed at my church when I used to go to church back when I was into religion. And you know, I just really found it fascinating being able to take direction, you know, learning how to use a camera with like angles and moves and stuff like that, and also learning how to use the AV equipment they'd use to make films that they would broadcast on public access. And that led to one of my first jobs ever, which was at WPAA Channel 18 in Wallingford, Connecticut, which had like a little like building on the main street. And so I, like, once my job was done with just doing like church filming stuff, I wanted more. I needed more. I wanted to really like take it further because I'm an ambitious person by nature. And so I convinced the guy who ran both the church stuff and the public access station to let me like try a few episodes of like a show that I was putting together as like a side project for my video production class. It was called Livewire, The Next Generation of Gaming. I made it in 2004, and I enlisted one of my TV production class members to co-host it with me because I was really into video games. And back then, G4, which is like Games for TV channel for digital cable owners, was like a brand new thing. And I wanted to feel like I could be a part of that in some way. So I like got all my video game posters, all my strategy guides, all my like video game memorabilia, and even consoles, and I just bring them down there at like 7-8 o'clock at night, stay after hours, you know, dress up a set very loosely and just run through the script with him. And we ended up shooting one pilot episode, and I had the crazy idea because I saw a guy working in the green screen room say like, hey, can we try something out? And he's like, sure, I'm all for it. What you're doing seems a lot more fun than our typical programming. And so we rigged up a green screen where I was doing a video review of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 by going into the Mystic Cave level and describing what's going on and why this game is a great game by actually going into the level on the rails as like Sonic was fighting the boss there. And as a result, I ended up editing all this stuff together. I put it in, I submitted it for my final project, and I was the only person in my class to get an A+ because I went the extra mile to put like all the effects in, even though I was just learning on the fly. So that really just helped me like give me the extra push I needed to pursue getting a film and animation degree at the college where I went to, and just taking my skills further with this podcast. And before I go back, before I let you have the floor, Russ, because I'm sure you're dying to share some stories, much like Alex, I had my stint of silly videos that I'd make at home, whether it's like home movies or bloopers or really dumb stuff I feel like I could submit to America's Funniest Home Videos. There's this one time we had a health class project where we were all forced to make a video PSA of like some sort of health or wellness topic, and I got assigned drunk driving with my partner. And I'm like, okay, well, that's so common on TV already. We need to do something different. So I got the crazy idea to go to my grandmother's, borrow her authentic Sesame Street puppet toys, which were like Ernie, Bert, Cookie Monster, Oscar the Grouch, and Elmo, and Grover. Yep. And we would film scenes of it with like this little Sesame Street like open up playset from the 70s with like a little car driving by and crashing into the Sesame Street buildings. And then later we would show like a car parked up against trash cans with all the puppets hanging out and, you know, fake blood underneath them. And we were like, remember kids, drunk driving is bad. Yeah, listen to us, don't do it. And I swear every time, well, the first time we showed it in health class, everyone was laughing hysterically. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even the teacher thought it was phenomenal because it engaged everyone and it was also entertaining. So we also got like A+ on that as well. And she said, you know what, guys? I really appreciate the effort that you put into this video. Do you mind if I show it to all of my health classes for this project from now on? And like, sure, take it away. And so I became like briefly sort of famous for like a week or two at school because everyone saw that health thing and would come up to my locker and say, hey, Brett, nice job with the Sesame Street drunk driving PSA. That was so funny. And like, yeah, this is my calling.
Well, I don't have anything quite as great as those stories. I think the closest thing that I have that would relate to this episode is you know, it's like the first, I was in Boy Scouts. It was one of those first weekends where we kind of, you go away for the weekend with, you know, just your troop. And at that time, recording songs off the radio was like the thing. That was how you got music. And I remember specifically, Marilyn Manson had just dropped The Beautiful People. It was a big song, but it was kind of a taboo song. You know, some parents didn't want you listening to it, you know. So I had grabbed a tape. This is right before we left. I had grabbed a tape and I'd recorded this song, and I thought I was going to be the hero of this. You know, here we are, 12, you know, young boys in a cabin listening to taboo music. But what I didn't realize is that the tape I had grabbed was, and instead of making videotapes, I used to make like tape recordings, Mm-hmm. And this, so I had evidently recorded the beautiful people over a recording of myself when I was like 7 or 8 years old, but there was about a 30-second intro of me just talking. And I don't remember what it was, but it was quite mortifying for me to allow these other kids to hear this. And they kept rewinding it and playing it and rewinding it and playing it because they wanted to hear the beautiful people. But it just made sense to get that extra 30 seconds in of me talking like an idiot. And I remember thinking to myself, of all the tapes I could have grabbed to use, this was the one I chose. And whatever I was saying on it, it was just me being myself, being stupid in my room with a little, microphone talking into it when I was like a kid. Years later, this tape goes untouched and then records this Marilyn Manson song. And we must have played it 100 times. And I remember the Boy Scout group would start reciting the things that I was saying because we had listened to it so many times. It almost became part of the song. So that was a very
wow.
And now I look back at it, I'm like, it really wasn't that embarrassing. But at the time, I would have grabbed anybody with a credit card and said, pay any amount to buy this tape right now. So that was sort of the closest thing, something. And I will say, I took a couple notes, and something interesting that happened in this scene. This is the second time in this episode that they reference the words modern life. So at the beginning of the episode, Heffer says, not modern life, Rocko's modern. So he says, at the beginning, we're filming Rocko's modern house. Then later in the episode, that whole Rocko's modern is again in the title of his video. And I just wondered, is that a thing in a lot of Rocko's Modern Life episodes where they say Rocko's modern? Because they said it twice in this. And again, that feels like we're breaking this third wall in animation by doing that. And also on the tape, if you notice, they cut in an actual scene that's not cartoon. It's like a storm. It's like a clip of like an actual news report of like a storm outside. And again, it's that breaking that third wall. It's like the Muppet Babies when they were like always in real
when they
stuff,
opened the
or like
doors.
Roger Rabbit, right? So it had that feel to it. And I just was like, the more you think about it, the more you're like, holy, this episode has a lot of they just threw everything at it. They were like, doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. Let's just go with it. It all stuck.
Well said. I think Wacky Deli would be an excellent follow-up to this episode because it's got the same kind of balls to the wall zaniness to it, and they also have like live action footage intermixed with the actual cartoon that the three characters produce for the episode. So it really takes a different approach that's outside Rocko's normal hijinks, which is like, something ordinary happens and then it kind of escalates and then it comes back to normal again, whether it's like grocery shopping or vacuuming the house or giving the dog a bath. But here it's just like, okay, we're gonna take this video camera and we're just gonna have fun with it right from the get-go. And it starts ridiculous and it just gets even more ridiculous because the bar's already set so high.
It's so funny too, and you see some of these things when I look at like what's modern day Nickelodeon. Where do I see these? I see these in SpongeBob, which is interesting because a lot of people that worked on SpongeBob or on Rocko went on to work on SpongeBob and create SpongeBob and so on and so forth. And it's interesting that they take this. SpongeBob does a really good job of breaking that cartoon third wall, and I wonder if you actually sat down with the crew, if they would ever give reference back to Rocko's Modern Life and say, you know what, this is where we cut our teeth doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure they had many fond memories working on that show. Even Tom Kenny, who voiced Heffer before he voiced SpongeBob, him, Stephen Hillenburg, Mr. Lawrence, they all got their start here. So I'm sure they picked up a few things.
This was a big show, I think, for Nickelodeon. What's interesting about Rocko's Modern Life is for how big of a show it was, how little merchandise accompanied it. When you really look at the merchandise available compared to something like Rugrats or, Hey Arnold. I mean, SpongeBob is obviously a merchandising machine. But when you look at things of that time, Rocko has arguably the least amount. Even Doug has more.
Well, I think Disney has something to do with that for Doug.
There wasn't much Nickelodeon Doug, but there was more.
There
Disney
was not.
Doug.
Disney has a lot more Doug stuff. Which, by the way, I just finished Disney's Doug, and if you've not ever watched the very last episode, it ends that series nicely. Since we're on the topic of Doug, I just wanted to say that.
I've actually seen it all as well, save for like a couple of Quailman episodes because they started to feel redundant. But
I agree with that.
That's another episode we can talk about, or even pick Jim Jenkins' brain on at some point. Is Disney's Doug versus Nick Doug, because I'm sure that would create a big
I wonder if you can
divide in
even
our
talk
fan base.
about that. I'd love to know if
It needs to be talked about, because you can't just go off of surface level prejudgments. I mean, granted, the first episode, I think it's Doug's birthday or something weird like that, where he's like wearing the lucky hat and everything's changing. That's a little bit of culture shock to Doug fans. But later on, it definitely settles in. And when you get over the different voices, a lot of the plots seem to feel like old Doug, but just, dressed up a little
Absolutely. Too much Quail Man. But aside from that.
Yeah.
Well, before we go back to the episode, I'm going to backtrack for just one moment, because you had said that you used to make your own VHS covers. I actually still have an old VHS.
Awesome.
And
Here we go.
even had the labels put on there too, and made it from Paint program and Microsoft Publisher. And yay, early 2000s.
That's wonderful.
I swear to God, if you and I lived in the same town growing up, we would have been best friends.
We would have.
I do want to add a quick tidbit, because I was just thinking about it. Alex, I don't know if you've seen this episode. Maybe Russ, you have, but there's I think it's later in season 4 of Rocko. It's called The Emperor's New Joe, where the Chameleon Brothers tell a very long-winded story to Rocko about how coffee is so important to them, because they have that coffee shop in the basement of the video store. That's the same background. They reused that for both of those episodes, and Heffer was actually down there working as a coffee barista for that later episode. So I find that interesting as a connection, because for typical zany cartoons like Rocko or Ren and Stimpy, or any of Tex Avery stuff, or anything that came before it, Looney Tunes, there's not a lot of story arcs across them. It's pretty much encapsulated moments with
very little continuity. Very little continuity.
So it really stands out to me when you see those little threads that you can connect together, like I see here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back to the episode. The next day, Rocco's house is stacked to the rafters with hundreds of copies of Le Moderne de Pinto, both inside and out. Rocko carries 17 VHS tapes to Heffer, who is taking inventory of the stock. Rocko inquires how many more videos are left to reclaim, to which Heffer replies, 10,989, 11 more to go. Heffer pauses, then adds, make that 10. Just then, Filbert enters Rocco's living room with the final 10. Rocko anxiously asks, is it 10 or 11? Heffer nonchalantly replies 10, but only because he sent one off to the Australian Film Festival. Rocko screams, you did what? And then crashes into his mailbox as the postman walks up and opens his mouth and puts letters into his mouth without batting an eyelash. Rocko opens the mail, revealing a letter from Rocco's parents. Turns out they just came back from the film festival, and they are very proud of him. His parents further request if he would sign the enclosed censor bars for his relatives, and they also included $10 for a robe, and how much they love him mentioning his baby nickname as Boo Boo. Heffer and Filbert laugh at the Boo Boo name as they frantically stick the censor bars all over themselves like suction cups. Luckily, there is more good news. Enclosed in the second letter is a check from the Film Board Nationale du Australia, proclaiming the La Vie Moderne de Pinto film won the film festival. Rocko is stunned with disbelief. Later that night, Rocko orders his friends to help him erase every last videotape in their possession. The moment Filbert grabs a videotape and pops it into the VCR, it's revealed that the first one isn't even theirs. It's a film called Toads in Love, starring the big heads as they break plates with their tongues. Very sexually, I might add. The episode irises out with three friends on the couch in the shape of a censor bar as they stare back at the viewer completely mortified. And that, my friends, is the end of the episode. So, how do you feel about this final scene? Does it remind you of anything else in 90s Nick at all?
It does not remind me of anything 90s Nick, but it does remind me of 90s VHS tapes. One more personal story that it reminds me of. I was always asking for new VHS tapes because I was using them
too.
like candy. I would fill them with anything that was on TV that I wanted to keep. And usually my dad would go out and buy some, but every once in a while he'd have some that he had recorded something on. He didn't really care for it. Here, just record over it. And it was rewound almost to the very beginning of the video. And much like what Russ was sharing earlier, where there was about 30 seconds prior to, there was a 5 or 6 seconds before my recording took place. And
what was it, Alex?
And my dad could get all the cable, the like HBO and Showtime and Cinemax and whatever this movie was. There was no like build up. Apparently he started it right when the scene was getting good, because you what Russ saw on his paper route was what I saw on screen for a whole 5-6 seconds. And yeah, I grew up pretty quick in that moment too. And then it cut right to whatever I recorded on Saturday morning cartoons. I was like, no, why did Dad, you didn't tell me this was on here. I would have left it alone.
You're watching Top Hat Entertainment, adult programming all day, every day, except in Florida and Utah. Coming up next, Stardust Memories.
Baby.
Ay, caramba!
Bart!
Dad! Oh, here's what I was looking for.
Daddy's little secret.
It was your own version of Toads in Love. I get it.
Yeah, very much.
We've all had
very
that,
much
we've all
Toads
had
in
that
Love.
tape.
It reminds me of those scrambled channels too. If you didn't like get HBO and it'd be like the inverted colors, and you tried so hard to make out the shapes, but you just couldn't.
I see nipple.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me a lot of the Simpsons episode Homer versus the Eighth Commandment, where he gets free cable and steals it essentially from a cable guy who's illegitimate, and Bart's charging admission to have all of his classmates stay up to watch the naughty channels with him.
And now, the Top Hat channel is honored to present Broadcast Nudes.
Gross! Yet strangely compelling.
Huh?
It's a raid!
What the kid? You! Hey! You! I know you! Come back here!
Yeah. Every kid definitely did that at least once in their lives growing up in the 90s.
Here's what I'll say that I felt in the final scene. What I like is this is a classic sort of joke setup punchline that we've seen before, where a video gets filmed, a picture gets printed, a newspaper gets printed, whatever, and some person realizes this and runs all around town thinking they've bought every single copy, only to find out one copy has not been bought, and the person or people they didn't want to have it are the ones that got it. We've seen this in probably Saved by the Bell and Family Matters and, Step by Step and so on and so forth. So it works. It's funny. It works again here. We know the joke's being set up. We know the punchline's coming, but hey, that's what we want. And you know what? I think that that for me, it was a nice way of sort of rounding out the episode. We found out that Rocko's parents were not upset. They sent him some cash. He won some cash. I guess we're assuming the money he won covers the cost of these thousands of tapes that we've got stacked up, which also I will say that the Chameleon Brothers have an incredible distribution channel set up in that they can sell and like 10,000 plus VHS tapes. I mean, they had 900 themselves, and we all remember walking into a Blockbuster to rent, the latest big movie. There was not 900 copies of that. So these guys had this basement Blockbuster that was rivaling the national chain. And in their little town, they managed to move 10,000 of one VHS. It's incredible. That's the real story here, perhaps. Is their bootleg distribution chain. But I love the way it ends. I think the joke of finding the big heads have their own X-rated video, because of course they do, because why wouldn't they? That makes total sense to me. And, we end on a high note with the main cast on a couch, kind of all together. And that's the way it should be. It's a Rocko's Modern Life episode that kind of lives within its own episode from start to finish. There's nothing that happened before or after really strings through to the next episode. And sometimes those are the best episodes.
Indeed, yeah. It just felt like one heck of a ride that didn't let up. In the few moments it did, it gave you just enough time to catch your breath, like in the Spunky scene, or like when he first talks to the Chameleon Brothers in their little basement cafe. And it really has a great iconography to it, like, because it's a snapshot of pop culture history at the time, especially when VHS was becoming so popular that you had a video chain in every town. In the early to mid 90s when it was on the rise. And it just makes me think of all those memories of like renting VHS tapes and, taping my own and even taping over some I didn't want to of home movies. It's just a great encapsulated experience of what it's like to go through that kind of media at the time that I don't think many kids will really understand unless they talk to their parents about it and, get to hold and see VHS tapes and camcorders for themselves.
That's very true. It's very true, and it would have been great if they had made some of those VHS tapes orange tapes, just to throw.
That's a nice little nod.
Not that it would have made a lot of sense, but I would have really liked the subtle nod.
Hey there, Gackoids. Just want to take a quick side note to tell you that upon my research during the editing of this episode, I actually found footage of the orange SNCC tape in Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling, which you can see pictured here on the video version of this episode. So in a weird way, Russ got his wish when it was put into Rocko in 2019. Now back to the episode. The icing on the cake would have been if the Big Heads tape was orange, because that reminds me of the Rocko's Modern Love VHS tape that they actually came out from Nickelodeon. Like, go see that one if you want to see this episode. Yeah. So I'm going to read some quick trivia real quick that I unearthed related to Rocko's Modern Life Camera Shy, and then we'll give our episode ratings and jump into our segment. So I found out that in reality, it actually would be difficult to view a VHS tape from America on an Australian TV in the 90s, mainly because Australia, much like Great Britain, uses the PAL format system, while USA uses the NTSC system. There is a difference in signal formatting of the image on screen and also the frame rate, but only AV nerds like us would know that. As mentioned before, the breaking plate scene at the end of this episode from the Big Heads, scandalous tape was actually footage first used in the season 1 episode Leapfrogs, which was actually banned after airing once or twice on Nickelodeon. I'm surprised someone taped that. I'm curious. Who was the person off screen that was capturing
Who's
that
the
moment?
third?
Yeah, it's very much like the ending of Sugar Frosted Frights, where Filbert points out, "Wait a minute, who took those pictures?" And it's like all the characters from the episode in the picture, and that's where the existential dread sinks in.
Just a gosh darn minute. Who took those pictures?
Also, you might notice we talked a bit about censor bars earlier, and in the season 1 episode, Sand in Your Navel, which we covered for episode 25 of our podcast back in season 2, Rocko also wears a censor bar then, particularly when he's about to enter the nude beach to retrieve Spunky from the one-eyed peg-legged pelican. We actually see a network sensor, just kind of slap it on him right at the last moment, which I thought is a nice fourth wall break as well. And lastly, the 1950s stock music track titled Domestic Fun, which is basically the music track for the title card of this episode. It was actually later reused for the season 3 SpongeBob episode Grandma's Kisses. So there's another SpongeBob link there, as we mentioned before. All right, guys, what do you give Rocko's Modern Life Camera Shy for your Splat Attack ratings?
I'm going to go with SS. I would say that it was almost a perfect episode, and if I had to give it any setbacks, here was my only critiques. Since we're talking about a really artsy episode, I'm going to use a word like critique. So I would have loved for this to be in a whole 30-minute episode instead of just a half episode. I really think this one, the plot was so good, we could have really stretched it out. I also think that it would have been nice to have seen Rocko's parents. Perhaps we see them at home, because we only ever see them. We see a few photos of them in a couple episodes, but we only see them in one episode. I felt like this is an episode we could have had them in. Now, for me, I'm a big fan of holiday-themed episodes. So a perfect episode to me is the Christmas episode or the Halloween episode. This comes in right behind it. Fantastic. This is like a 9.8 out of 10.
Excellent perspective. Yeah, I agree with you there. Alex?
I absolutely loved this episode. I'm not gonna lie. Today was a very, very rough day, and I was very happy that we were going to be recording this episode tonight, and I didn't even have the chance to watch this episode yet. And going back and watching this episode, it took all the frustrations that I had throughout the day and instantly had me laughing within the first couple of minutes, and I would not stop laughing the entire episode, because this was my life as not necessarily as a kid, but much more so when I was a teenager and I started borrowing my parents' video camera and was making my own stuff and having no shame and making videos that others would enjoy. And then also my mom and dad with their cameras. I mean, the last couple episodes were very funny, and I very much enjoyed them. So I knew I was going to enjoy this one. But this one just took everything and amped it up for me and brought back memories. And I mean, I have no qualms or even tiny little nitpicky things about this one. But it also it was so relatable for me. So this one gets my top tier triple S for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, for me, I pretty much have to echo everything you said, Alex, because this was my life growing up. And whenever I saw this episode come on, I would stop everything. I would push people over to get to the TV to watch this and Fish and Chumps just because how much I loved it. And it's just one of those episodes that can really, really erase anything stressful or bad or just hard to deal with during the day, like it did today for me, and just really take you back to that really special place that makes you appreciate 90s Nickelodeon at its core. So for me, everything, all the gags land for me. I wish it was 30 minutes as well, because there's just so much more to explore in O-Town, even with other characters a little bit more than just like Rocko and the Big Heads. But that's not enough for me to knock it down, to be honest. I loved everything they offered. Maybe if Rocko ever gets a proper reboot, maybe Camera Shy 2 with like a cell phone could happen, but who knows how that'd work out.
He becomes viral famous.
He could, yeah, even for this video, just Redux. So for that reason, it's my #1 favorite Rocko episode of every single episode I've seen, even the holiday episodes, which are also fantastic. It's right up there with like Wacky Deli, Teed Off, Magic Meatball, Bye Bye Birdie, anything else any Rocko fan would appreciate. So I got to give this exceptional. It's a triple S for me.
Very, very high rated episode among the three of us. That's awesome.
Yeah, surprisingly, that's a common pattern this season. Alrighty, well, I'm all censor barred out. Let's wrap up this video and head to Australia. Alex, ready to drain the slime tank as usual?
Not so fast, Brett. Before we close this episode out, Russ is quite the collector of various Nickelodeon goodies, and I've been told that he is pulling out the big guns for this episode. So let's take a trip over to Collector's Corner first.
Ooh, exciting. You got it. If he's got anything Rocko related worth showing, then I'm there. Onward to Collector's Corner, Gackoids.
And now, it's time for Collector's Corner.
Well, for Collector's Corner, Russ is going to share with us some very special items that he has picked, which, I'm promised that we and our viewers have never seen before. So,
hang on. I gotta prepare myself. Make sure I'm sitting down, because there's some big stuff here.
There's some good stuff here.
Get myself ready.
Get into the zone. Get focused. Get ready, because listen, guys, I'm super excited about this. And a couple things I want to say. I started my Nickelodeon collection in 1991, sitting in a Pizza Hut, getting handed a Doug cup And that it was like a dye to the brain. It was just like drugs right into my system. I mean, I just immediately started collecting. Now, the interesting thing about Nickelodeon collecting is for the longest time, I thought I was the only one. And with the advance of the internet and, I started meeting all these other collectors. And so now I have this very small little Nickelodeon collectors group online where we all sort of share our collections. And there are so many great and wonderful collectors out there that have these incredible collections. I've been collecting. I'm one of the guys who's been collecting for the longest. I think I have a pretty amazing collection, but some people have some awesome stuff too. So, I will plug my Instagram at the end. And for those who want to follow, you can also find a lot of the other collectors through my page, and you should give them a follow too. They've got some really cool stuff. But I wanted to bring out the really big guns because I want to be invited back to the podcast. And so this is.
Oh, you already secured that during our pre-pod conversation.
Oh yeah.
This is the give them a little. Get a little more later, right? This is the game. So I'm gonna show you guys some really cool items. I'm gonna start with what I consider to be the least cool of the items, and we're gonna work our way up to the big granddaddy of them all. And so where I want to start is with something that a lot of people have, just simple production cells, but it gets a little better. So as we know, production cells pretty standardly look something like this. So we've got an Real Monsters cell here with the main cast, right? Okay, not bad. We move on to a more rare cell, I'll say, a Hey Arnold. Again, not bad, but every once in a while, a cell comes around that blows the rest of the cells out of the water, and you're not sure really the story behind it, but I'm hoping one day we can figure it out. This is a jumbo master cell from a really big episode of Doug, which I'm hoping we can get the whole cell.
Doug's Lost Weekend.
Here. He's playing his Super Pretendo, and if I zoom in close enough, you'll see, and there is a reflection, but Jim Jenkins has signed it and doodled Doug and Porkchop at the bottom of the cell. This is about twice as big as a normal cell. Master background, master cell. Originally framed. I do believe that this hung in an executive's office. This feels like something that an executive would get, probably as a Christmas gift, something along those lines. Doug is my all-time favorite show. That is just an incredible cell from a key episode. So I thought, you know what? We'll start with the cells and we'll go from there. When it comes to game shows, I believe there are two real winners. There's Legends of the Hidden Temple and there's Guts. Those are the two. I mean, that's it, right? Now, interestingly enough, in 2016, when the Splat was sort of back, MTV did this big thing in New York City where they partnered with Mountain Dew, and they got a bunch of people from the show The Challenge to do this thing called the Do Grow Crag.
Yep.
So people, big stars from The Challenge, Johnny Bananas, CT, Jenna, so on and so forth, they were running this, and at the end, they had a special mini trophy that they gave out, and there, from my understanding, was only 2 or 3 made. This is one of them. This is a mini aggro crag, and if you zoom in close enough there, it's got the logo on each side.
Yeah.
And it's quite small, as you can see. I've never seen another one. I don't think any more exist. It's made out of like a really strong styrofoam. It's not very heavy. It could be easily destroyed. It's the only one I've ever seen.
Could we see the date on that real quick?
So the date on this, it says June 16th, 2016 in New York City.
Very nice.
So we're what, 8-9 years now? Maybe more?
That's weird to think about. It's been that long.
I've got the video footage of that, Brett, if you want to put that in.
And we don't need polls because we built a friggin' do-grow crag.
Oh my god, I watch Guts all the time.
Powered by the Splat for fans to cast their vote. These are the kind of values this country was built on. I've always wanted to take home a piece of this. Get your vote out by tweeting with either #VotePitchBlack or #VoteBajaBlast. I got on my purple shirt. I'm doing it for the mantle, baby. When you bust out a 90s icon like the aggro crag,
I've been preparing for this course since 1996.
Right. That's it. And I don't even really know what the point was. It was just some weird promotion they were trying to do. But speaking of promotions, we don't know a lot about this next item. We do know that only 3 of them seem to exist right now. There's another one that's my colored, and then there's a pink one. And what we believe this is is one of the pieces of the aggro crag, the big aggro crag that shot off when they were running up, and it was later given as a promotional piece to people who worked on the show. And this is what it looks like. It's a little tiny painted rock, and it's kind of foam but really soft. And on the front, they've painted the Nickelodeon Studios logo, and it glows as bright as you can imagine. There's very few of these. Each one is different. The only other color I've seen is a neon pink where the logo does not show up as well. And I've seen one more like this that is a different shaped rock. The story from the guy that sold them was that they were crew gifts and they were part of the original set, and they were then given off as crew gifts. So I do have other Guts items, but for today, that's what you get to see. Now we're going to start to move up to a couple cool items. I've got what I consider to be 4 items left. So we're gonna scroll back to Doug for a second. This is an original Doug style guide. Ooh. From the animated series, of course, from the Nickelodeon series. And as you go through, you can see that it showcases everything from plot points to characters and colors to all the different, just everything you could want to know about Doug. Styles of individual people to locations. This is what, the animators would use, of course, to make their episodes. And there would only be so many of these style guides made, and likely many of them destroyed. I've not seen another one. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure Jim has probably a couple of them. But to roll through this is a pretty cool, especially when you get to the different locations and the Honker Burger and the school and his house and his bedroom, all the different aerial shots you would never see in the show, but the perspectives that the animators would need to see in order to properly animate this.
I have to say, after looking through that style guide, I've never seen Patty bend that way before.
I feel like that's the clippable sentence for this podcast.
Yeah. I had to say it, sorry. This episode left me in a dirty place. I had to just keep going. That's wonderful, Russ. I'm so glad we got to see all that.
3 more items, and these are my favorites. Okay, so check this out, and this is a 2-parter. I really love vintage food and candy, and Nickelodeon made an incredible amount of it. Now, this is something I've searched for a while, and I've got both of them. From 1995, these are Nickelodeon fruit roll-ups.
Yes. Ooh, I used
They're
to eat
unopened,
those.
completely full. As you can see, there is hot colors and strawberry. And then the backs I will show you, because they have 2 different backs to them, which sort of showcase free stuff you can get and just this talking about whatever. These are super, super hard to find. There's a couple other collectors that do have them, but let me show you something that the collectors do not have. They do not have this. And let me open this up and showcase to all of you exactly what this is. This is the original cell that includes all the figures that was then used to print on the boxes. Now, what's really interesting about this is you never see a professional Nickelodeon cell with so many different brands on one cell. So if you look at the characters here, you can then see them all again printed down in the corner here, and that's the actual cell from the printing. Back in the day, of course, they had to do it like this and then take a really high-end photo and then use that photo for the box. This was back in 1995. So what's interesting is I found these 2 items separately. They didn't come together. I've actually had this cell for about 15 years now, and it was only last year that I found the 2 fruit roll-ups. And I will say that only last year as well, the original commercial for the Nickelodeon fruit roll-ups popped up on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, you can type in Nickelodeon fruit roll-ups and go see that.
Oh, we'll put a clip here instead. Even better.
Love it.
The quest for the newest fruit roll-ups continues.
Finally, Stimpy, it is ours. Don't you know what that means? A creation of my very own, made from my stinky sweat socks. He's gone mad. No, Ren. Yes, yes. Look what you've done. My plan's ruined. You idiots.
It's new Nickelodeon team-outs, Ren, Stimpy, Doug, and more. Nickelodeon characters now on fruit roll-ups. What fun fruit roll-ups will we roll out with next?
All right, this one really needs no introduction. From 2005, This is an original Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award. This is the real deal. This is the actual, it's the kaleidoscope, as you can sort of see. And in the back here, you look in. And of course, this was given to favorite author, a series of unfortunate events. So this was to Lemony Snicket's. And there's an interesting story behind this. What I love about this is 2005 is arguably the end of the silver era of Nickelodeon, right? So the studios closed down. We start to get away from all the original everything and go into that new area. And so this is one of the last years that the blimp looked like this. Interesting story about this. How did I get this? Well, a friend of mine called me up, and I'm just outside of Toronto here in Canada. And a friend of mine called me up and said, "You collect Nickelodeon stuff. That's something I know about you." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. That is something you know about me." And he says, "I know someone who has something, just bought it, and would like to know if you're interested." So I get on the horn with this guy, and he says he's got this item, and I say, "Yeah, right, I'm sure you do. Like, you know, don't believe you." And anyways, I drive half an hour to meet him, and sure enough, he's got it. And I asked where he found it. He went into a little thrift shop here in Canada, and this was sitting on the shelf for $2.
What?
And somehow it made its way to Canada. An original Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award made its way to Canada on the shelf. And I bought it off him I paid $400 for it. So he made quite the markup. He was quite happy. I will say that there are a few of these out there. I'm not the only one with one. I will say I'm one of the few with an original. A lot of people have the newer ones with the newer logos. I've seen a couple people that have ones that aren't actual awards. There's nothing on the back. It's just the logo again, because it would be the one that they would hand to people as they would win it. And they would hold it, and then they'd go backstage and take that one back, and they'd get the actual award. A few years ago, the Backstreet Boys and Nick Carter separately had two that went up for auction, and recently a few newer ones went up for auction. But I think this is one of the few vintage ones out there. So kind of a cool item. I thought your crew might like it. And if anyone's interested on the bottom, it's felt. It's like an orange felt, so it doesn't scratch up the surface.
Incredible.
Now for the last item. Yeah.
I have a quick request before we get to the last item. Would you be able to put the eye hole portion up to your camera as if we were looking through it?
Let me see.
Yeah, now I can see it. Spin it a little. Yeah, oh, that's great. I see your shirt in it.
Yes.
Oh, that was nice.
So this last item is arguably in the top 3 or 4 items in my collection. And, you know, there's a few photos of it floating around on the internet. Some people have claimed ownership to it. But the photo that's floating around, the two of them are from my house in my basement. I've never really sort of publicly shown it before. So you guys are getting first crack at it. It's behind me. I'm gonna have to grab it. It's actually quite
Splat
heavy.
Attack first.
Here we go. So direct from Nickelodeon Studios in Florida is the actual waiting sign for the attraction. So this is the sign, and it's in rough shape, but this is her. And she hung outside Nickelodeon Studios, and I can turn the dial back here and actually change the wait time for how long the attraction would take. There's not much left of the studios, but this, I'll show you the back. There's a dial there. This is one of the few pieces that exist, and it's the authentic sign. There's many photos of it in it. And yeah, so this came from somebody that I know that worked at Nickelodeon Studios who was able to save this for me. And many years ago, I got a call and they said, would you be willing to ship this up to your place? I said, no problem. And sure enough, this thing showed up. And so it's a beast, and it's super heavy, and I think I'll get it framed one day, but it'll take a lot of weight to hold it up on the wall. And so that is those are the items I'm showing you guys for today, and I will say that represents possibly about 1% to 2% of my collection. There are so many gems, there are so many goodies, there are so many ones of one. 30 years of collecting, hardcore, and there was a period in those 30 years where I was one of the few people collecting. So I was gobbling up everything that was coming on eBay for pennies on the dollar, things that are going for hundreds, if not thousands now. I was getting them for $5, $10, and I just built this massive, robust collection. And so The things I have, these are just things off the top of my head, but the items I have are super vast, and I would be happy to showcase more anytime I come back.
Oh, you're coming back. I mean, you're probably going to be a part of our staff in a year or two. That's just incredible, Russ. Thank you so much for sharing your collection. I mean, I feel like you should mount that Nickelodeon sign in front of your front door at your house and only allow Nickelodeon fans in.
Put it in front of your bathroom.
And it's funny. It's funny you say that though. So if you jump on my Instagram, there's a really good guy on there named Sebastian. He's a guy that I just met through Nickelodeon Collection, and he lives in New York City. He's actually a puppeteer on Sesame Street now. So shout out to Sebastian, awesome guy. But sure enough, he happened to come to my hometown one time, and we got together, and we called it like the first Nickelodeon collector meeting ever. And it was just really wild. He went over my whole collection. It was amazing to have someone there that just understood and respected it and had everything going. I will say, as I was telling you guys off air before, I did go to the studios once after it closed. I will not get into the story now because I will save it for the podcast, but I did enter the studios when it was closed, and I was inside for a little while, and I left with items, and that is where I will leave it. I will show the photos and the items another day because it is a fun story, and I think enough time has passed that I shall not get in any trouble for that. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed what I had to show you today.
It was awesome, man. I knew it. I knew you'd have some awesome stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, this is nothing, guys. This is the interesting thing about Nickelodeon. It's like, why does all this stuff exist, right? And when you think back to it, the reason is, with Nickelodeon being the first kids channel, they really had to sell themselves. And in order to sell themselves, they had to make all this weird, wacky crap and send it to all the local stations all over, the United States to get the station managers to pick up this channel. And so the amount of promo, swag, and all this junk that they made. And then when you start to incorporate in things like Nickelodeon Studios, and when you look at the products they made, GAC and Floam and, this, that, the other thing, the stuff that actually landed on store shelves, all the weird and wacky stuff, it was created, it was conceptualized. Some of it made it to market, some of it did not, but they just are one of those weird networks that has a lot of weird stuff that exists outside of the norm, and that's the space I sort of love to live in. So myself and the rest of the collectors, we really sort of collect from this, from the incubation, like the 1989 right through to about 2000. That's our zone.
Ooh, that's the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot, right? Right about when SpongeBob starts is kind of when we dial it down a little. And we like to stick to a lot of the vintage stuff. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of fun when a really cool item goes up that none of us have seen, and there's a fierce bidding war, and we're all talking about it. It's like we're like piranhas, right? Like, we're not gonna bite each other, but we're in it for ourselves at the same time. Yeah. It's wild, but there's some great collections out there. If you're into this type of stuff, I implore you to check it out.
Definitely.
Well, while I know we'll give you a section to plug, but since we're already talking about it, for anybody who wants to follow you and check out some of the stuff that you have to share, where can they follow you at?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So on Instagram, you can follow me at Nickelodeon_collector. Which seems like a pretty appropriate title, Nickelodeon_collector. And you'll see I don't just collect Nickelodeon. I'm all about that 90s vibe. I've got lots of, Saved by the Bell and TGIF and all sorts of great stuff. And you'll see some wonderful pictures of my little French bulldog, Punky Brewster. She's on there too. So if you like Frenchies, listen, Frenchies and Nickelodeon, it's like goes down easy every time. So
yeah, great combination. Thank you again, Russ.
Yes, thank you. Those were awesome.
My collection is nowhere near as impressive as that, but mainly because I've had to move over a dozen times over the past decade. So unfortunately, a lot of stuff like Nickelodeon VHS tapes, which had plenty of action figures and whatnot, unfortunately just got lost to time or got dumped off at a Goodwill. But I do have a few things that I do enjoy that I still saved, and it's just a couple of Rocko related things because I like sharing things specific to episode topics we're doing. So the first one, this is the Shout Factory DVD of Rocko's Modern Life. It came out around like 2011, 2013. And it was the first time that Rocko was like encapsulated all in like one complete series set. Before then, they just had like Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, or like even the season sets, which Joe Murray did the actual repaints of. As you can tell here, the artwork is like hand painted just for this release, so it gives it like an extra level of exclusivity. It's also worth noting that the bonus features on the back, which you can see here real quick, includes the Wacky Deli Live 2012 Joe Murray and the cast kind of talk at a convention. There's Behind the Character shorts, Season 3 commentary, and of course the original Trash O Madness pilot, which we used footage of for our favorite pilots episode back in episode 40 of our podcast. And I really love this set most of all, just due to the level of charm and care that's put into it, even though the discs are just reprints of the volume sets in here, which is a little disappointing. But if you see the sleeve that I insert, this is the inside of the outer cover. You see like this big mural of O-Town characters, just like all around Rocko and the Beakhead's house. And I love seeing that. It's like a mural to celebrate the series and all the crazy stuff we've witnessed through it. So I gotta appreciate it for that. And I'm sure many Rocko fans who have, DVD collections of sorts, especially Nick collections, will like that.
I agree. I own that as well, and I'll say that
nice.
Soon after that came out, Joe did this. I don't even know if it was like a GoFundMe or something like that, where he essentially took that O-Town photo and he blew it up in a big print, and he was selling it signed. And so I ended up buying a couple, and anybody who bought one, he ended up including all these sketches. And so now I've got like sketches of like Rocko and Heffer and all these guys included in there, just done by him really fast. And it's just something he did many years ago that I kind of jumped on. And so you bringing that up is wonderful, because it's just reminding me that I have that. And you're right, such a great set, beautifully printed. It was just nice to have the DVDs. Like, finally we had the whole run,
Yeah. There was a time when Shout Factory had the rights to Nickelodeon, and they're actually pumping out all these different series for the first time, like Hey Dude, All Real Monsters, Angry Beavers, just to name a few. It was a great opportunity to snatch those up too, so you didn't have to hunt for them or rely on old VHS recordings as well. The second thing I'm going to share is a Nickbox vinyl character from 2020. I forget which, I think it's from a spring 2020 set, because I don't remember which boxes they come from, but this is the No Pain, No Gain Heffer vinyl figure. So you can see him in his original box. He's got a submarine sandwich that he's eating, because he was eating a lot during that episode, more so than working out. You can see him on the side a little bit. And then, of course, the back, Nick Box exclusive. And then on the side, a cartoon version of Richard Simmons holding Rocko, which I love as an added touch. It's a great early season 1 episode. And then lastly, I have another Nick Box vinyl figure, because I love collecting action figures. It was like one of my favorite things to collect growing up. This is from the episode Hutset Raw, and it's from a spring 2018 Nick Box, where it shows Rocko with his like camping gear. It's already been opened, so I'll take it out to show you real quick, get a better view of it. Here he is.
That's great. They did such great work on that.
Yeah, I love the quality of the vinyl, although it has changed over the years when they expanded their Nick Box and like SpongeBob box offerings. I noticed in particular they had one with like Vacation Stimpy and Vacation Ren, and they used totally different like plastics and vinyl for them, and it just didn't feel the same. But at least they made a couple quality good ones before they changed the materials and stuff. So that is my brief little Rocko's Modern Life collection.
I love it. I love the Nick Box exclusive. Great. I love the Nick Box and the Nick Box in general. I think it's a wonderful.
Definitely. It helps keep the nostalgia alive, and there's even a couple later ones that are still offering some great items in them. I'm particularly looking for this one vinyl figure of Filbert where he's got like the whole lounge singer look going and it says Philb on the box, and I couldn't find that one on eBay for years. So if that ever pops up, I gotta snatch that. All right, guys, any final thoughts before we do our closing question and head out for the day?
Only final thought I have was this was a really fun episode. I really enjoyed checking it out again after all these years. Loved all those collector corner moments. That was so cool. Thank you, Russ, so much for sharing all, and thank you for being here. I know we'll say it again in the closing, but it really means a lot to me that you've supported us all this time, and that we finally had a chance to have you on. It's been an honor to have you, my friend.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I appreciate what you guys do. You know, it's things like this that I think really keep the nostalgic feeling alive. Something I've learned is, like, you can sit down and watch the episodes, and that's great, but the magic was really in the bumpers and the commercials and the interstitials and the, you know, we'll be right back and this and that, all those, it was all the things combined. So you really lose some of the magic when you're just watching these, you know, you're streaming them. And having this type of podcast and talking about those moments, I think is the closest thing that brings us back to being that age, to being, you know, coming home from school and just binging this day after day. Like, that's what this podcast is about. So great episode to talk about, you know, great to be on this, guys. I'm excited to do another episode with you guys. And just thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome, and it's such a pleasure to get to know you beyond the podcast, like in person, on screen, however you want to call it. It's always like really fun for us and very rewarding to actually meet, you know, some of our fans who are interested in Nickelodeon, is like we are very passionate about, because in like ordinary everyday life, you don't really run into many of those types of people, and if you try to spark conversations here and there, usually people, at least from my experience, give me funny looks. So to, you know, connect with other people who just get it, even though it's something that happened decades ago, it's just a wonderful experience to share with other people.
Definitely.
All right, Gecko, it's time for our closing question. What do you believe Spunky's special trick was? Additionally, have you ever made a video or home movie you're proud of, which we've definitely shared our fair share of stories about? You can answer either question or order one of Alex's VHS tapes that's homemade from splat-attack2021@gmail.com, our email address. Or you can also DM us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Splat Attack Podcast. We're also on Twitter and Facebook as well, but in terms of my involvement, I'm most active on YouTube and Instagram. Alex handles like more of the Facebook stuff. We also have a bonfire page. For the time being, until we get a better merch store, you can get all of our shirts and mugs from over there. We have some great logo shirts from all the past seasons. I recently uploaded a Stickly shirt design that was fun, and there will definitely be more in the pipeline as we continue to navigate through our own merchandise journey.
And thank you again, Russ, for joining us. And again, if any of you want to check out some of his stuff, go to Instagram and check out Nickelodeon_collector. That is right, isn't it?
That is correct, guys. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. All right, Alex, take two. This time with more pathos. Will you drain the slime tank for us, please? I have to send a director's cut of this avant-garde episode review to a podcast film festival I've already applied to.
Aye, co-captain. Now, while you send that, I gotta go downstairs for a glass of milk. Fully clothed, of course.
It does a body good.
Don't worry, I won't film you. Spot you later, Gackoids.
Bye.
Bye.
Hope this fits.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
I reckon it's time for me to go.
I'm glad that's over. Now for a peaceful night's sleep.
Well, that does it for now.
Yeah, we gotta catch a train.
Since I'm going home, you get my arts and crafts project. It's a tweezer holder.
Alright, guys. Let's go fun.
How long have we been away?
See you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Heffer, can we start, please?
White balance!
Heffer, are you focused?
Woo! Hey, Rock! Do that goofy face you do when you're buying eggs.
What?
Now let's make some magic. Roll it!
Ricotta, you're going to be a big hit in the avant-garde circles.
Everyone who is wishing to look artistic will want one.
That's my nakedness!